time.
All right, here we go. Another Square Dance Callers Talking podcast tonight.
Woohoo!
Yeah, tonight I have one of my favorite people, a lady I met several years ago, and I've gotten to know her a little bit better throughout the years. She is currently in North Carolina. Tonight I'm talking to Patty Greene. How are you, ma'am?
Hello. I am great. Sitting here in the woods of North Carolina with my little house in the wood behind me. So
I will say it's one of the best backdrops I've had so far on all my podcasts. Now, Travis he was on a starship, I believe it was, from Star Wars. So, yeah, I mean, so special effects, I think he has you, but from a natural background, that's fantastic.
He's kind of funny like that.
Yeah, he is.
He's kind of a geek at heart.
And he never said a word about it. I was like, you're sitting on a spaceship, but Travis is awesome. He's another good guy that I've met in all the years that I've been doing this now. So, where are you in North Carolina?
We live in Monroe, which is about 20 minutes southeast of Charlotte. We're about 3 hours from the beach and 3 hours from the mountain. We're practically in South Carolina. It doesn't take very long to get to the border. So we're kind of in that area just below Charlotte.
Okay. I know where Charlotte is. I could probably find Monroe, but I've never been. But I know where Charlotte is. Charlotte, North Carolina is nice. Because being from Savannah, I've spent a lot of time in South Carolina, parts of South Carolina. And so I know how to get to North Carolina. I just haven't gotten a lot there. But so as a Square Dance caller, when did you start calling? When did you start? How about when did you start dancing? I'll start there.
Well, Steve's parents danced forever, for like 100,000 years, complete with the matching polyester pants and the outfits, things that you will not be seen in when you retire. And I started seeing Steve when I was 30. So I was older when we got together, and his parents had always tried to get him square dancing, and he's not a dancer. And so one night his mom and I were sitting just talking about the kids, and he came home from a particularly bad commute. We were up in New Hampshire, and he said, I'll go to your square dance. He thought we were talking about conspiring.
Right.
And that was back in the late 80s, early 90s. I think we graduated in 90, where, classes were huge, 10 squares of class people. So next night, we left the kids at the house because they didn't want anything to do with it. And Steve's parents took us over, and I had only square danced at summer camp as a, icebreaker. Right. And I thought, well, this is a lovely time. Very nice people, they were lovely. Now that I've been around for a while, I suspect that Elaine had primed the club members, to make sure Steve had a good time.
Right.
And so we got home, and I thought that was lovely. And we went about our business. And the next Tuesday, Steve came home and said, how come you're not ready? And I'm like, ready for what? And that started our square dance journey. We were taught, Ed Monty taught us, we were survivors, because back then you were survivors. And we took classes with the Alamandates, and we graduated in April, because in New England back then you took lessons from September through April, so you could attend the North Carolina convention, New England convention. Okay. And we took plus during the summer. And when we graduated from our class graduation, our caller found out that I sang, and so he asked me to do a singing call with him, which was okay. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just singing harmony. And we danced for about, I'm going to say about a year, and a friend who graduated at the same time decided he would start calling. And back then in the New England convention, there was a full-time duets hall. Wow. Just duets, all duets, all singing calls, or maybe a few hours. Maybe it wasn't all the time. And he asked me if we were going to convention, and we hadn't really thought about it. And he said, well, you're going because we're doing duets in the duets hall. So for probably about a year, we just traveled with him to his dances, and I did singing calls with him. And then, one year probably in 94, something happened and I decided that I could do this. And I didn't, he needed me more than I needed him. Don't dare me or double dog dare me, or because I will defy your odd. And so I went to college school at Ken Ratusi's school up in New England.
Wow, that's a great one to start with right there.
Well, back then it was kind of hard because this was in the early 90s and the brand new callers were taken downstairs and the focus was on site calling.
Okay.
And as a new, like a brand spanking new, all I had done was singing calls. I had a really hard transition to calling patter. I was told that the chicken plucker was something that was used by callers who didn't know how to call. And if you tell me something like that, I'm not going to waste my time learning something that, we all have limited time.
Right.
So I did not learn from the start chicken plucker module, what happened, what's the best, that's absolutely the best way for a new caller to start. So I got out of there and I was incredibly frustrated because patter site calling did not come natural to me. So I read. I still have my 5x7 cards with choreography. I had a music stand and I read because I wanted to give the dance. I wanted to give the dancers a good dance, and I didn't care really how I did it. You hate to go to a dance and it's square through 4, right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel, square through 3. Oh crap! Right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel, square through 3. Oh, same. I didn't want to do that to the dancers. So I went back to school a second time and I was going to quit. Because I'll give it another try. And Johnny Preston was on that year and he sat with us new callers and he explained that wherever your strength is, that's the tool that you use to give the dancers a good dance. And, my strength was not site calling. My strength was speed reading. So I could write some choreography, but I couldn't remember it.
Right.
Even today, I have a hard time remembering that. So I decided not to quit. And, 30 years, I don't know, 95, 25, 30 years later, here I am.
Wow. Okay.
Still get nervous when I have to fly by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
And now I'm past 5 years, I've been really trying to relearn how to call. Mm-hmm. Because I wasted the first couple, my imprinting time, those first couple of years. I just didn't have the tools to do what I needed to learn. So that's kind of how we got started. I taught a class when I first started calling officially. As a new caller, you need mic time.
Right.
You need to be in front of live dancers, not dancers you have in your basement, but the whole unknown of having somebody show up, not people that you know. So I did a couple summers where I did Patty and Friends, where every Sunday night I had a hall, and every Sunday night in Manchester, New Hampshire, we had a dance, and I invited a fairly come on, come say hi, come on, let's get it out of the way, come here. The boys are going to make an appearance, but
special guest.
Special guest. It's my marketing manager. Doesn't do a very good job. Oh, there you go. There's the tail. Come on over. Say hi. There you go. This is Sweet Potato. I have very nice. Keep going. You can't block the thing. But so I would invite a well-known caller to share the dance with me because I figured the local dancers would come hear them. Mm-hmm. And I had badges made up and, t-shirts, and it was actually kind of fun. And the second year I did it, because I wanted, just it's how we got exposure up there. Mm-hmm. It was kind of comical because I would invite people that I thought would do it with me. You're new, you're not gonna, you're not gonna ask the big guys. Yeah. And I had a couple of callers that were like mad that they didn't get asked to do the Patty and Friends dances. It was kind of funny. And then I just started teaching because, you know, I've always taught, and I back in where I was, there were just some clubs that needed somebody to teach their class and be their club caller. So that's how I got started.
Now, you said early on that they knew you were a singer. What's your singing background?
Well, I
Or are you
have
just saying for
always,
fun? How you said you were a singer?
no, I thought that I might like to do that for a living for a
Mhm.
while. You know, I did the standard church choir and school choir and the musicals. Um, I was never, I didn't have the physique to be a leading lady. So I was always in the pit, let's just say. I
Gotcha.
was always in the pit crew or the understudy or, you know, another part. So I was never the leading lady. I went to school for music,
Okay.
voice, and I thought I might teach, but I couldn't pass my piano proficiency, and I didn't really enjoy student teaching, so I abandoned that. And which is funny because now I teach.
Okay.
I sang. I my almost claim to fame. I sang. There was a big band that played at the Parker House in Boston, and I was working in Boston, and I would follow them around because I had a crush on the trombone player, whatever. And they found out somehow that I sang, and they invited me to come down and sing with them and audition to be their singer. So I actually sang at the Parker House with the Winneker Swing Orchestra, which was, I scared myself out of pursuing that because that would have been fun.
Yeah.
And now you know, I've sung my whole life. I've, you know, led worship. I've led retreats. I've sung at funerals. I sing with a big band now. I square dance call. So it's kind of what I wish I could have done,
Mhm.
but it wouldn't have paid the bills.
I understand. That's fantastic. So you were calling, and you have a somewhat of a musical background. You went to school for a while, and
Mhm.
so you start calling. So in the mid 90s, you said it was about 94 when you really
95, yeah,
started,
95,
95, started getting
yeah.
into it. When did you start calling your own dances and get a club and all that roughly?
I think probably in 95, 96.
Okay.
You know, Winnipesaukee, there was a club in New England. There were a whole bunch of clubs at that point in time. And there was a club, Winnipesaukee Squares, that they were struggling, and I think they had probably seen that I was doing those summer dances. And,
Mhm.
you know, in New England back then, there was a club caller who did the workshops and the dances. And then they had, you know, guest callers to do like the special dances and other dances. So it was hard to break in. So Winnipesaukee Squares just took a chance on me. And you know, when you're starting, you take anything.
Right. Yep.
You know, so I jumped at the chance. I mean, I remember when I first started taking like out of your hometown dances, I got a call from a club in New York. We were living in Southern New Hampshire, and they wanted to hire me for a dance. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
somebody
it's
wants to
awesome.
hire me. Woo-hoo, that's awesome. And they said, oh, you know, how much would you charge? And I don't know anything about pricing. You know, I'm not, even today, I'll work within your budget because it's a job, but it's also a ministry for me.
Mhm.
So I told them $100. Let's just pick something out of I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, can we book you for another date? And would you have New Year's Eve open? I'm like, oh my gosh, they haven't heard me and they want me to call for them. And I said, of course. So they sent me the contract, and I signed the contract. And about a week before the dance, I went to look up where it was, and it was down in Katona, New York. It was not a quick jaunt across Vermont to upstate New York. It was down through Massachusetts, down to basically to Long Island. And I thought, well, no wonder they asked me if I would come down sight unseen for $100. So I learned, if I don't know you, I'm going to Google where you are first to
Yeah,
see
good idea.
what it
Absolutely.
is.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And so how did that go? I mean, do you remember that dance? How did it go with the squares and all? A lot of squares.
Went back. Well, back then it was probably 8 squares. I had a good time. They had a good time.
Mhm.
It was, I think that when I get there, I tend to try and make sure that whoever shows up is who I call to. If I've had dances in the past couple of years where, I went up to Virginia. I was going up to Virginia a few times a year, but it's like 5 hours, and that drive is getting old. It's just because I would go up, call the dance, turn around, and come home. So I've kind of backed off of doing as many because I'm getting old. And I remember I went up for a dance, and there was a younger couple there. I think they had like 6 squares, which was typical for them. And I always asked the club president if there are any new dancers there. Because I'm a female, sometimes the newer dancers will come out of curiosity. And she said, yeah, we've got some new dancers. And she pointed out a young couple. And I'm like, oh, great. And so I got up and I did a mainstream tip, and they struggled with square through. And I thought,
Oh,
okay. And they struggled with swing through. And I thought, okay. Well, after the tip, come to find out, they were brand spanking new dancers.
no kidding.
They'd never danced before in their life. So I said, okay. And they were having a great time. So the club stacked a square, and in between tips, I would go over to the couple and I would say, okay, I'm going to show you a couple of things that we're going to use in the next. And they ended up dancing all night.
Wow.
They were scoop back in, they were square through in. So I will adjust, depending on who shows up. I've done that several times. We had another one down here, Valentine's Day dance, and a young couple came in, and he was looking for a dance to take his girlfriend, who I think later got married, and found the ad for this club's dance and showed up, non-dancer. I went to the club president and I said, hey, can we get him up dancing? And they're like, well, sure. And same thing, they danced all night. Every other tip I told them to get up, and they were young, young people pick things up quick. But typically things go fairly well unless it's a train wreck of a dance, and then they don't go well.
Yeah, I was talking to Charlie Robertson a while back, and we had talked about that. If you had teenage, high school age kids, you could do the mainstream in about 3 days if you had them for 3 solid days.
Right.
So there's a curve that you have to work on, and obviously most of our classes and dances are not high school age. You'll get 1 or 2, 3 or 4 on a good class, but usually it's not that. And so it's nothing to be said about the people taking the class. It's just they can't take it in. Not to mention they've got a whole lot more going on, and even kids today. And that's the oldest thing I think I've ever said. Kids today.
What age are you considering kids today?
20s.
Yeah,
teens, 20s
today. Yeah.
And when I see that, even when they're riding in the back of the car, when I look over, when I'm at work or whatever, I look over, and in the back seat, they're not on a vacation. They're going to the Publix or the Kroger, and they've got a video screen on the back of the headrest watching a cartoon. And I thought, you got to save that. If you want to watch videos, the kids just have so much. You can't expect them to stand in a square and square through 4 and then wait and learn something else, because you got to figure it out. But they can take it in faster than usual. So there's that. It's just, I don't know. There's too much. Uh-oh. Your picture's gone. Oh, now you're back.
I hate the internet.
That's all right.
Anyways.
So, but no, I just want to say, even kids today, there's so much. They've got to have a phone in their hand or something like that, so it's tough to get them to say, hey, let's take some square dance classes for a few weeks.
Right.
But still, they can learn at a higher rate than we will ever learn at this point. So you're teaching people on the fly at dances. That's great.
Yes, sir.
What levels where do you dance to level wise?
I dance a hesitant advanced.
Okay.
A1.
Do you call advanced or you mainstream plus?
No, I can call advanced. I've got some advanced choreography. and the challenge is around here, there's not very many places to call it.
Right.
And as you know, each level is a whole different language. And if you can't practice the language, it's hard to, it's hard to call.
Yes, that's true. I've told people I've taken advanced, but I don't dance it, so I don't know it anymore. It is a language. That was explained to me a while back, that square dancing, every level is just another language.
Right.
And once you can learn that, you can move on. But
right. I know it enough to call it, and I know it enough to kind of help. But I haven't got the body of dancers here that I can really cement it. Gotcha. Actually, my first, I'm mostly mainstream plus. My first advanced tip I ever called was I went over to Japan with Tony and Jerry, and petrified. And the way that particular weekend worked is it starts out with advanced and then plus then mainstream. So it starts with the harder stuff and it gets easier and easier. So we get there and I had prepared material. I read because I wasn't taking any chances, because it was important to me, especially over there, to give them a good dance experience. So I had all this material prepared, and I'd worked it out with checkers, and I'd worked it out with animated stuff. And I'm going to go first. Like, okay, I can't even get my bearings with something I know, like mainstream.
Yeah.
So I got up there and I started calling, and I had, this was several years ago, and I had pass and roll was like in just about all my sequences for some reason. And it sounds like it would be a quick call, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It just has the sound of a quick call.
Yeah.
So I would say pass and roll, swing. I don't even know what the next call would be, but pass and roll, take a breath, swing through. And the dancers would go run in and they do whatever the next call was. And then we'd be back in our rhythm again, and blah, 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 pass and roll, blah, blah, whatever the next call is. They'd look at me, they'd go running, like, what is? So I got down I got done with my tip, and Tony came over and told me that I had balls of steel, for my first tip in a foreign country ever, to do a language I don't know. And then he quietly said, you might want to give him a little bit more time to do pass and roll. I'm like, oh, crap. Looking at my cards, let's strip that out. But that was my first experience calling advanced. And I've called it a few times, many times since then. And it's always interesting because it's a different animal.
Sure.
It's just a different animal than circle left. So
I can't imagine going to Japan or any other country, because from what I understand, and I've never called another country, that the dance level is so much higher than most places here. Not all, but most places is so much higher, and it's so much more vocabulary exact for wording and everything. So to walk in there and go, I'm going to drop my first advanced tip and on this, that, I mean, I would forget my opener on mainstream if I was in Japan, the first tip. I wouldn't even go in and go, you know what, I'm going to try advanced tonight. Well, I've decided to do it here in Misawa. This is going to go well.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Well, I've always, my whole life, I've been somebody that I've accepted a challenge.
That's fantastic.
And if you ask me to do something, I'm gonna do it 99% of the time, the very best that I can. And, I was not going to, especially if it's an opportunity like that, I'm not going to say, oh, no, I don't think so. I'm going to say yes, and I'll prepare. But yeah, it was pretty, I was probably pretty stupid, but it worked.
Well, I mean, it's something to just put on your belt. I mean, you've done it, and and you don't get those opportunities all the time. When else are you going to be something like that?
Not anymore.
So,
anyways,
to take a chance like that, that's fantastic. And it says a lot. The only thing I have to compare that to is when I go to a caller school, say a GSI or whatever, and I know the people that are up there teaching me, because, I spend time with them. I know a lot of them personally. but they'll come up and that we're doing whatever drill. I want you to do everything left-handed, whatever the drill is. And I'm just like, God, I do not want to go up there because they understand, but I don't want to look bad. And I feel bad when I go up there and they're like, hey, get them into a left-handed wave from that spot. And I'm like,
what's a left-handed wave?
I'm like, and of course, the same excuse that we all use. I don't call left-handed stuff, as if that's going to be the answer, when you got to. And that's exactly why they tell us to do it, because they know that most people don't do it. So yeah, going to Japan and just dropping an advanced tip to start the dance is fantastic. That's a great story. So you go to Japan. What year was that? You remember?
Oh, that was probably 10, 15 years ago. That's been a while.
Okay. So, and you were with Tony and Jerry. So when you were starting out and you went to Ken Ritucci School and another one, who were some of your influences as you have been coming up through it?
Tony for sure. I think that when I was first starting, there weren't very many women, and Deborah was definitely somebody who I thought I wanted to be, because she sang, and she was herself. And we had some really good, smooth, just really good technical callers in New England. Jim Mayo was somebody I looked up to, and who did a lot of mentoring to me. And I've kind of tried to take what I could from the people who were put in my path, good and bad. I very quickly learned that I was probably going to be better off being the best version of me rather than imitating Deborah, being just like Deborah or like Tony. And I think that served me well because I didn't spend a lot of time wanting to be somebody else.
Okay.
But definitely Jim Mayo, Tony, I shadowed. I can see his face.
Was he New Hampshire?
Sean Cuddy. I got it.
What's his name?
I got it. I shadowed a guy named Sean Cuddy when I first started learning how to teach. I would go, Chris Pinkham. He's the one I started calling with. So I went to a lot of his dances. I observed an awful lot because I was invisible, because I was a girl and back then. So I observed an awful lot. But, at my first caller school was Ken, who gave me my first square dance record.
Okay.
Tony, Jerry, Randy Doherty, and a guy named Skip. I can't remember what his last name was. And so they were kind of the ones that started me off. Okay. And made me do patter. So we get to our graduate, you gotta do what they tell you to do, right? And so we get to one of the evening dances and they told me I could not do a singing call, which, really pissed me off because it's what I do. I said I had to do patter. I'm like, oh crap, I can't remember any of this stuff. So they thought they would intimidate me because they knew I think they know when you're petrified. Sure. They can tell. So they, Tony and Jerry and Randy, I think it was Randy, they all squared up in front of me, right smack dab in front of me with mixed couples, And this was in 94. I think that was my first call school. And at that instant, in my head, I said, okay, you can allow these people to intimidate you, or you can just stand up and do what you do. So I called every star through, but I called every single gender specific call that I could think of in my little pea brain to mess them up. Like, you are not going to make me look like a fool in front of all these people, because I'm not the worst one here and I'm not the best one here. So but that was my very first public patter with all of them squared up in front of me. Bastards.
You know, if they didn't do that, that you wouldn't know that they liked you, because you know they wouldn't do it, and you learn that over time.
Right.
All the positions I've been put in over time with Tony and Ted and
Yeah.
some of my guys around here. The one story I tell everybody about it, a guy named down here named Randy Ramsey,
Yep.
really gave me a lot of help starting out, calling and everything else, and he was the one. Other callers would say, go up and do a singing call, Charlie, because I could go up and karaoke with the best of them when it came to singing calls. But Randy would say, I want you to do some patter. And I'd say, okay, man. And I'd go to his dance on Friday night. I'd have me a little piece of paper like this, everything written out. And he did it 2 or 3 times. He's like, hey, let me see what you're going to call tonight, buddy. And I'd show it to him, and he'd wad it up, stick it in his back pocket. And he's like, all right, go on up there, bud. And I was like, come on, Randy. And he's like, no, it was his club. They all knew me. He was like, you can't fail. You know, you're not going to learn if you go read it. Go up there and call it. And he would stand behind me, and I'd start boom, boom, and pass through and bend the line and star through and swing through. And I'm like, what do I do, Randy? And he's like, pass through, trade by, Alabama left. And I was like, pass through, trade by, Alabama left. So he would get me out when I lost it. But, you know, and if I thought this guy doesn't like me, that's why he's taking my words from me. It's not. He wants me, and he still will do that to me. Another one is Ken Ratucci. Ken Ratucci, every time I'm calling, I'll hear Ken's voice go, resolve, Charlie. Go ahead and resolve now. And when I'm just calling, because he does that in all of his schools, he's like, I want you, and I don't want you to slow down. I want you just to resolve. And I'll call.
How many years do we have? How much time are you giving me?
That's just it, you know, and the part of it is, I don't want you to trade ladies, trade boys, circulate until you get it. You know, I want you to resolve and do something that works good and it works well. And so I will. I've got a dance tomorrow night, and at some point in patter, I'll hear Ken say, resolve, Charlie, and I'll go and resolve. But that's just something that's in my brain. But I know the guy likes it, which is great.
Right.
So what I've been asking a lot of people too, because I've had a couple now, what's one of the most memorable halls or nicest places you think you've called just to set up? What do you think?
Oh, geez. I mean, I've been in a lot of places. Well, duh. Doesn't matter where it is. The band hall at Nationals.
Yep. I'll give you that.
My absolute favorite place to call.
Yep.
You know, I don't have any real memorable ones. I mean, there used to be one of my favorite places to call was, there was a campground called Horseshoe Acres up in Vermont that I did for a couple of years. I did a weekend up there, and it was they danced in a closed pavilion, wood floor, and it was just a nice environment. Another one of my favorite places to call in to dance, back in the day, there used to be a pavilion at Hampton Beach, and during the summer, the local clubs would have a square dance, and it was on the ocean. You got the ocean breeze. Wow. You know, you're on. Same up in Winnipesaukee. During the summer, we would have dances on the boardwalk right on Winnipesaukee Lake. You know, one of the most memorable places is I was hired to do a fun night, no experience necessary, at a campground on Winnipesaukee Lake that I had to put my equipment on a boat to get to. So they shipped me out there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And there was a generator, and it was your typical camp, walking up from the dock, you know, with it, I mean, it had electricity, but it was just a cool open air. You know, I literally was on a boat taking my equipment over, which,
that's fantastic.
You know, was pretty wild. And dance it went over in Japan, where they danced. But I think only because it was just so beautiful. You know, the host club, their color was yellow, and it was I I think it was like a, it wasn't a shopping mall, but it was kind of like a convention center, big hall. And when you looked out, it was this beautiful sea of yellow. And they were dancing so, wasn't perfect, but so in sync that, you know, I just sometimes forget where I am because I forget that they're doing what I'm saying, but they were dancing so beautifully that it was very, I mean, I will remember that for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's a fantastic memory. That's great.
Those are just a couple of places.
Yeah, I say that I've you know, most of the places I've called in the years that I've been doing it now are there's either like a elementary school, senior hall, gymnasium, and all.
Yep.
You know, I will call, like I tell people, I'll call out in your front yard if you want me to.
Yep.
You know, but some of them stand out. I called it one in Macon, Georgia, for New Year's, and a couple times other than that, it's like a school. It was a one-room school from the late 1800s,
nice.
1900s. Still had the same floors, hardwood floors, and it had a huge. It was the gymnasium part of it, so it had a huge stage. Where I'm about, of course, I'm only 5'6". I think I might be 5'5". I don't know. Most places I call, there's not even a stage. So if I have a tall number one couple, that's all I see. Okay, until they start moving, and then I got to figure out who's with who. So when I can get a stage that's 2 foot, 3 foot, and this one in Macon is about 3.5 foot, and so I'm just looking over everybody's head, and I'm like, this is awesome. Yeah, because you can see so much more.
Yes.
That's the same with the Ghost Riders band, and well, all the halls we had in Mobile, they were all raised up, and so you walk up there, and I'm like, man, I can see all the way to the back.
Yep.
Because I tell people at the clubs I go to, I'm like, hey, if you're in the back square, you can do whatever you want. I will not see you. You know? Matter of fact, if you break down, put all your hands in the air so I'll see the lines you're forming because I can't see you.
Yes.
So
that's funny.
You know, and people say, why don't you stand in a chair? I was like, well, that's an accident waiting to happen. Put me in a chair.
Yeah, that's professional. That's thanks
Not
for
to
the
mention,
suggestion.
I am one of the more mobile people, I think, when it comes. I'm all over the stage when I'm calling. So I was like, there's no way I could be in a chair. I'm coming off that chair. So,
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So we got your most memorable places out of the way. Now, you've got a background in music.
Yes,
if you're not listening to square dance music, before I say that, you've recorded several songs. Tell me some of the songs you've recorded. I'm not going to ask you for your favorites because they're all should be your favorites, but what's some of the stuff you've recorded?
Yeah, well, my first one was Timber.
Okay.
I did that on Royal, and I had never been in a recording studio before.
Mm-hmm.
So Tony invited me. We picked the song. We went directly to Nashville, which I'm like, oh, that's really exciting. And I watched the guys do the music because Tony does the music the way he did it. Music one day, then you have a rough cut, and then you cut the vocals the next. And so I had never seen anybody do anything. So watched him do the music. Steve and I went down. It was really cool. And like I said, I'd never been in a studio before. And so I'd never been really recorded. It took me 10 years, to listen to my senior recital on cassette tape. That shows you how old I am, because you don't hear yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? And by then I'd been calling for bid, and everybody's like, oh, we love when you sing, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, so next day we go into the studio and they make me go first. I'm thinking, oh, okay. And in the ear, I am petrified because I didn't want to disappoint Tony, frankly. Petrified. Thing in the ear, play it through. They make sure everything's okay. It's okay. I got the levels. One take. I didn't know that you were allowed to punch in and out. I thought, and I mean, it was written, I had it written down, but I didn't know that you were allowed to fix things that were broken. So one take.
That is
phew. Yeah. So then they pull me back into the, where the engineer is. And Tony says, you want to listen to yourself. I want to see how it sounds. I'm a pretty intelligent woman, I consider myself. And I said, sure. So I sit down next to Steve and they start the playback, and it is I am sharp. I am flat. I am off. I mean, it is embarrassing. And I turned to Steve and I said, I can still picture it to this day. Is that what I sound like? And he went, well, yeah, it sounds like you to me. And in 2 seconds, I had sold my equipment. I was canceling my gigs, and I was never calling ever again, because I'd been fed in my head. I'd been fed such a line of crap from everybody. Well, they all start laughing because they had pitched it up. Stupid me, who knows what they can do with that stuff.
Yeah.
You want to really hear it? I'm like, oh, phew. Because I really, if that's what I sound like, there's no way I'm going out in public ever singing again. So, so Timber, I did Holly Jolly for Royal, mm-hmm. and Steve likes to talk about that one because if you listen to the called side, mm-hmm. you don't even know it's me, because it is so low.
Is it? Okay.
I mean, it is so low that I've had people wonder who it was, which I think is funny. I've been recording with Shauna, and I just like the music that's my music. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of, I can't think of favorites. So for Shauna's, she does a rough. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Mac does a rough, and she'll send the rough, and then I go to my shed and I put down a vocal, and I send Jimmy the vocal with nothing, and he picks it up and he drops it. Magic. It's magic.
Wow.
It's a cappella. He picks it up, he drops it on the track, and away he goes. So I was doing, I Got Rhythm, and I must have just been tired. So I do the legit tracks, and then I did a completely off key, off pace, not with anything that should be heard in public. I got rhythm, I completely like somebody who has no business doing anything. And I always send them a couple of takes so he can pick and choose. And that was one of them. Ha ha ha, laugh, 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 ha ha ha. They thought it was funny. Poor Jimmy was twitching apparently when he heard it. So then the next day I get, or maybe a couple days later, I get the finished tracks to listen to, because she always sends them, just be another ear. She puts in the fill, and they fill out the music, and they put the background vocals, and magic. So I get it back, and I'm not even thinking. I hit play, and they had created a whole singing call using my opener that was so off key and off phrase. It was hysterical that they punked me. So now I've punked them, and they've punked me. So Shauna says, oh no, this is going further. So Shauna takes that copy, and I was going through some stuff. I was in a kind of a bad space, just going through some stuff. And she sends Tony, who is like a brother to me, she sends Tony an email saying, I can't release this. I know she's going through some stuff, and I don't know how to tell her. I can't release this, and sends him the not for public consumption version of I Got Rhythm. And she told me she was going to do it. I was looking out the window here, cracking up, and he listens to it, and he immediately calls her. And he's like, you can't release this. She's never done it. I mean, you'll be flat, sharp, but it's never been this bad. And Tony afterwards, he said, I thought that she wanted me to tell you, and I didn't know how I was going to tell you that this was terrible. And I was really worried. I know what's going on with you, but then she started laughing. He was not at all amused. So we punked him.
That's fantastic. I'll have to ask Tony about that.
Yeah, it was actually kind of funny because it's terrible. It if you're a singer, like you're a singer,
Mhm.
and you're on pitch, you know, because you're aware of it, and it takes a little bit of talent to deliberately sing off pitch,
Sure.
you know, just to be so bad, and it was so bad. So it was kind of like a full circle punk, where he punked me on my very first singing call. And then Shauna sent him that. He was so he was he was so upset. Shauna couldn't stop laughing. She called me because we were on the phone. She told me what she did, and we were on the phone, and she hung up with me. She said, "Hold on, Tony's calling me." And she called back, and both of us, we couldn't speak for 5 minutes. We were both laughing so hard. So anyway, those were a couple memorable.
That's awesome. That's a great story. I told you before we started, I'm looking for funny stories. That's fantastic. I wish I'd have known that before I talked to Tony. I'd like to brought that up to him. Oh my gosh.
Well, every once in a while I'll do that. I'll just send a really, but that was just, it was perfect. Perfect. Because it's a song that if you can't sing it on tune, you shouldn't sing it.
Right.
It's that. Anyways, so there's a funny story for you.
Okay, that's a good one. So what I was gonna say before, so if you're not listening to square dance music, what music would you choose to listen to?
Oh, so what do I have on Sirius when I'm driving?
Sure. Yeah, whatever genres, or
Well,
what do you think?
I like the 60s and 70s. I like country. I like Dan Fogelberg, James Taylor, Carly Simon, that kind of 70s folk stuff. I like some current music of today. I think for me, I'll listen to anything that tells a story and isn't stupid.
Okay.
I mean, we're starting to lose a lot of really, really, really good performers.
Sure.
But I'm probably a 60s, 70s, some 80s. Not really. There wasn't really much music in the 90s.
It was a different type. It certainly wasn't the storytelling. The Jim Croce's and the Dan Fogelbergs
exactly.
and all that.
Right.
Great. Some really good music. I'm a big fan of Jim Croce and some of the stuff that he put out.
Oh yeah, he's great stuff.
One of my favorite singing calls that I do is "Have to Say I Love You" in a song.
Oh, yep.
I love that. I'll close some of mine with it because it's such a good song. It's something that dancers that we have, for the most part, I was always told the last thing you do, have somebody walk out of the hall singing the song to themselves. So I'll do that, or I'll do Looking Glass's Brandy.
Yep.
Because
you've got a friend.
Yep. They're all singing the chorus of it, and they're singing along with you. And so I'll throw that in there, so I never thought about the storyteller part of it. You don't hear that anymore. You don't hear storytelling songs.
Right.
Cats in the Cradle, another one.
Yep.
I can't remember the guy who did that one.
And I'll hear things, for me, a song really has to resonate. Mm-hmm. I heard, what was I doing? I don't even know what I was doing. And I heard Trisha Yearwood's I'll Carry You Home.
Okay.
And it's all about, well, I've loved her for a long time. It's all about, when you can't speak, and when you're at that place where you just can't find your way, I will come find you and I'll carry you home. And I heard that song and I was working. I don't even know why I heard it. And I just was weeping my little eyes out.
Wow.
Just so that for me, it doesn't really matter well, it does, because some of it doesn't lend it, but it really has to kind of touch me somewhere for some reason. But yeah.
I'm that way. There's who Eric Church is? Mm-hmm. I think he's out of North Carolina, actually. He may be from North Carolina. I'm not sure.
Is he? He might be.
Somewhere around there. He might be Tennessee. It might be Tennessee.
Yeah, actually, I think it might be Tennessee.
He's got a song.
I think you're right. It might be Tennessee.
I think the song is
I'm looking.
I love your
No, I
love.
better not look because I don't want to. I don't want to
No?
interrupt my signal.
Okay. But he's got a song. I can't remember, but I think it's called "I Love Your Love." And for the
Mhm.
first 3 months that I heard that, I sing everything when I'm in my truck with my wife, and I know it drives her out of her mind, especially songs that she likes. She doesn't want me singing over. But Patty, I am not making this up. For the first 3 months, I couldn't get through the first verse because I would start crying because I was like, "This is my life he is talking about."
Oh, you have a heart. See, look at you. You have a heart.
It's just like I wear a greasy ball cap and all. I mean, I'm just like, oh God, this guy, and I couldn't get through the song. And I told my wife,
Yep.
I said, if I ever did this as a square dance song, I don't know if I'd make it through. And but I'll
Right.
tell you another
You have
song
to
that's
go.
like
You
that.
have to go to that happy place.
Yep. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. There's another one. Tracy Lawrence's "Paint Me a Birmingham."
Oh, yep.
And oh my gosh, I do that as a square dance song now. I think Tony recorded it
Mhm.
a while back, and I love that song, and I will do that, and I'll start breaking up in the middle of it because I'm thinking about what the song means to me.
Right.
So, and of
Well,
course,
and I
my,
think
my club
that.
now, they're just like, not "Paint Me a Birmingham" again, please, and I'm like, you're listening to "Paint Me a Birmingham," so, and
It
they're always like,
really.
"What is a Birmingham?"
What's a Birmingham? What's a Birmingham? But
Oh,
there's the dancers. A lot of people think singing calls are throwaways. And, I subscribe that every single singing call, not all of them, because some of them you just do, and, you do them the best you can. But most of the singing calls, you got to try and tell that story,
yep.
because that's what makes it memorable. It's not that you have to grand square all the time, but if you kind of sing the tag and own the tag at least and act like you know what the song's about, the dancers remember that. I mean, you can sell a crappy song, and the dancers will fall in love with it if you can tell the story of the song.
Well, my wife's calling me.
Uh-oh.
Call her back in a second. Um, so what? She's at her mom's house. So I know she's okay. Um, but what I was going to say is, yeah, the singing call. I've never had it for. There's so many patter songs out there. Nobody's ever come up and asked me for boogie sticks. They've come up and asked me for don't rock the jukebox. Hang on just a second. Hello, I'm doing a podcast. I'll call you right back. You okay?
I'm on a date.
I was like, I'm doing a podcast. She's like, oh, sorry. And I told her I had
I'm on a date. I'm on a date.
everything's okay with her. Yes, ma'am. So, I do songs like that, but that's what drives your dance. It really is. Because people always will come up and ask me for certain songs to do that I've done before, and I'm like, oh, absolutely, I'll do it for you. And but nobody's ever come up and asked me to do a patter song for them. And
Right.
now,
Can we
and there's a
play
lot
this
of good.
record?
I mean, there's a ton of good patter music out that's now and coming out.
Yep.
But they are going to remember the singing call.
Correct.
And so you've got to be able to do that. Even if you can't sing it well, I mean, go out there and sing it. I've done a couple that my wife is my harshest critic, and that's what I appreciate. She will tell
Oh, I
me,
have one of those.
she will tell me that song's not for you, because I can't hear it. I hear a song and I
Right.
love it on the radio, and I'm like, I found the square dance version of that. Let's do it. And I'll do it. And my wife's like, not for you. Don't do it again. And I
Steve
take her
made
word for it.
Steve made me get rid of trailer for sale or rent. Yeah, the one that
Rings to
starts.
let 50
Yeah,
cent.
the
That's
one that's
awesome.
the one that sounds like it starts slow and then the
Yeah,
figures
and
sound
then
like
it speeds up.
but
Yep.
it doesn't. It's the same. He made me physically get rid of that record. He said you can never do that record again.
I
ever.
haven't done that in a long time. A buddy of mine, Steve Holshausen, out of Winder,
Yeah.
Georgia. That's it. That's
Yep.
one of his go-to. Everybody
Oh, is
asks
it
him for
really?
that song. Yeah, and I've done it with him, and it's just fantastic. I love it, but I'm like, I could never try to. I've tried Fisherman's Luck at a state convention in Georgia, and it was a disaster. Have you done Fisherman's Luck?
Well, because I mean, I can do it. If somebody else is doing it, I will harmonize to beat the band.
Okay.
But the actual melody it's I can't find the pitch. Yes,
Yeah.
it was a disaster. So
I don't.
we're
Wow.
see, I feel you. I got you.
We've and I was talking to some. So there's a handful of songs that my wife will tell me because now, and you've done it longer than me calling and on. Dancers for the most part will come up and say, "Man, that's great. You sound great." Nobody's ever going to come and say, a little off key on that one, Charlie.
Right.
They just won't say anything, so you don't know. But
Right.
my wife or a couple other callers will be like, "Hey, that's probably not your song, buddy." And I'm like, "Well, I got plenty of others, and that's fine. I'll get rid of it."
Steve will always tell me, you really should pitch that one. If he thinks I'm reaching too high,
Yeah.
not so much gutter, but gutter too. But if I'm reaching too high, he'll say, you need to either not do that one or you need to pitch it. You need to find a better pitch for that. So
You got to have somebody like that. You absolutely do.
yep.
So, all right. Some more about Patty Greene. I'll do this just for fun. You tell
Okay.
me what you think. I'm gonna throw a couple different ones in there.
Okay, I'm ready.
Because we are very close in age. This is for movies because I love movies and everything else.
Oh, movies.
What do you and this is the first one I've done for this one. Titanic or Poseidon Adventure? What's your choice?
I hate that song, so it's got to be the Poseidon Adventure.
You hate
I hate
the Titanic song? My heart will go on.
That
Celine?
song. I know everybody loves Celine Dion.
Oh,
I can only take her in small doses, so it would have to be the Poseidon Adventure. Melissa
Okay.
Manchester over Celine Dion.
that you pulled Melissa Manchester is fantastic. There has to be a morning after.
Yes.
That's fantastic. I did not know who sang it, so I do now. That's
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's her.
Yeah.
But Poseidon Adventure.
Movie wise, I love Titanic because I'm a big fan of the story that it told.
That one's easy.
Yeah, it's a made up story. Well, both of them really are. But Poseidon Adventure with Gene Hackman and Shelley, who was the lady? Winters. That was such a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I remember that as a kid watching that. And good times. Okay, here's another one.
Yep.
Footloose, the original, or Dirty Dancing?
Oh. Mm. Well, original Footloose, I love the music from that musical. And I mean, Dirty Dancing, I'm always a good underdog story. I'm gonna have to go with Footloose. That's a hard one. That was mean.
No, again,
which one would you pick?
I'm absolutely Footloose.
Yeah.
Again, love the soundtrack of it. I like the soundtrack of Dirty Dancing also, but just the story, the Footloose story was great. And all the people that were in it. I mean, I know Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey, I think was her name.
Who doesn't look anything like Jennifer Grey anymore.
No. A little bit of surgery took that away, but that's the thing.
No, it's gotta be Footloose. Original Footloose.
But yeah, I was high school when Footloose was coming out, and it was just, I was like, man, I wish I could move to that town. But of course, I would not have been. I would have been the guy that didn't know how to dance, but had to be taught how to dance.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't know any of that.
Well, that was a hard one.
Well, yeah.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, you're ready. Here's one I hadn't done before: Braveheart or Gladiator.
Oh, I'm almost thinking Braveheart.
Okay.
For no other reason than Braveheart.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that. I love Mel Gibson in that.
I
It's
bet you're a
great
Gladiator
movie.
guy.
Yes. Well, I really like Braveheart. That's why I picked those two out. They're two of my favorite things.
See, now I'm going to have to go
movie-wise.
back. I'm going to have to go back and watch Gladiator now, just to make sure I picked the right one.
Gladiator's just so. I mean, it's such a long movie, but the end of Gladiator is just fantastic. I love that. But Braveheart from beginning to end is great.
It's about family.
There's one I don't put out. I don't make a comparison to because it's probably my number one movie of all time, and that's Tombstone. What are your thoughts on Tombstone?
Tombstone.
Val Kilmer.
I don't know if we ever watched Tombstone.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not really if I have to choose between a Western and a cop show, I'm going to choose a cop show.
That's okay. Give me a couple of cop shows that you like. TV shows or movies. Yeah.
Well, I watch, let's see. All the big ones, Criminal Minds, loved Criminal Minds, loved CSI, the original CSI. I've watched all of the Law and Order franchises.
Nice. Okay.
Steve was not a fan of the Law and Order with, what was his name? Law and Order Criminal Intent, the weird guy. I can't remember what his name was. I like the NCIS series. I sometimes go to sleep listening to Forensic Files, thinking that someday I'm going to see somebody that I know.
Okay.
But I just enjoy them. I watch Hawaii Five-0, new Hawaii Five-0, but only for fluff because I think something NCIS is on after it. And I watched, it's not really a cop show. I watched, it's in its last season with the guy from,
Right Now is this last season?
not the Exterminator. What's his name?
I do not know which one you're talking about. I don't watch it on regular TV right now. I watch a lot of off of apps. So,
what's his name? He was the only person who could possibly have played the role. It's not we watch The Equalizer sometimes.
Equalizer, okay.
He has he brings bad guys to the FBI so they can find them to do his own nefarious things.
Oh, The Blacklist.
The Blacklist.
I love that. You know, when we got rid of cable about 2 years ago, is when I quit watching it. But I was a huge fan of that show from the beginning.
It's gotten weird this season. I don't watch it as much this season, but the beginning seasons were really good.
When they killed off the daughter,
yes.
James Spader, that's who we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
I just want to watch the Red Reddington parts where he's talking and doing anything. In the first few seasons, I loved the story and the storylines. Right. But as it went on and they killed her off, I was like, and we got rid of cable about 2.5, 3 years ago, whatever it was. And I'm like, I'm done with this. But I love the show.
He is the only person who could have done that role.
Oh, absolutely. He's such a good speaker. I love the stuff that he did, growing Less Than Zero and everything else. But James Spader's phenomenal. Love that.
So those are the stuff that I would pick.
Now, when you brought up the new Hawaii Five-0, and I've watched a handful of those, have you ever gone back and watched the original Hawaii Five-0s?
Hello, it used to be on in our house when we were growing up.
Okay, I know you'd watched them before. We started back about 2 years ago when we got rid of cable and we just got nothing but apps. About 1.5 years ago, my wife said, "Hey, let's watch Hawaii Five-0 from the beginning." And we're probably
from the old Hawaii Five-0.
Season 1, episode 1, yes.
Wow.
And it's such a good TV show. It's fantastic. Some of the storylines they have.
Yeah.
So we watch a lot of that. I go back and I watch we started The Love Boat over again from season 1. Yeah.
Really?
The other thing you're not used to with TV shows now, there's 10 episodes. The first season of Love Boat has 27 episodes. It takes you a month to get through these things. And I was
Season
just
1?
Yeah, season 1 has 27 episodes. Season 2 is we're in season 2 now. We've been trying for 4 months to get through this thing. But
no, that's Fantasy Island.
That's Fantasy Island. At some point, I'm going to go back through that. But Tombstone is Val Kilmer, Kurt Russell, Sam Elliott, Michael Biehn, Dana Delaney,
it's
Bill
a star-studded. It's a star-studded.
You have to go back.
Okay, I will watch Tombstone.
Okay.
Let me put it on my list here.
Yes, do that. Absolutely. You got to watch Tombstone. I can quote that from beginning to end right now if you wanted me to, but I won't. So we got that. So here, all right, you're 3 hours from a beach and 3 hours from the mountains. Is that correct?
Beach.
So beach, mountains, deserts, or plains. If you could be on a beach. Okay.
Beach.
Gotcha.
I'm an ocean girl.
Fantastic. Like I was telling you, at some point, I hope to end up on a beach. Calling a square dance every few days, and the rest of the time not having shoes on. So that
put my feet in the sand, toes in the water.
Absolutely.
It's my happy place. I worked for I've had a long-standing love affair with the ocean. I worked in college one summer. I spent the summer with my roommate in Marblehead, Mass, and we worked at Eastern Yacht Club. I mean, my family was not yacht club. Let's just say we were not in that, but I worked at them. I worked at one, and I remember there was a huge storm coming, and I was down on that dock just watching that storm roll in. Like, my favorite thing to do back then was I would take the train to some beach in New England and just lie there on the sand, not to tan, just lying there on the sand, because I love to listen to the waves and the ambient sound. Just happy place. So beach, definitely.
Absolutely. Growing up in Savannah, I tell everybody that doesn't know how to swim or doesn't know how, I learned to swim in the Wilmington River. My grandmother, there was a little place we could go in, and she would walk out as far as she could, and I would swim out to her. And I was 7, 8 years old, whatever it was. But yeah, I learned to swim in a river, and people are just like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "Yeah." And we would swim behind the shrimp boats. And I was like, exactly where the sharks are? That's where we're swimming. But growing up in Savannah, that's what you did. I didn't have a pool until I was later in life, in my teens or what have you.
Yeah.
So absolutely love the salt water, love the taste of it. That's the first thing we do every time we go to the beach 3 or 4 times a year. I'll go straight to the water and jump in and put my mouth in and just get some in my mouth. I don't swallow it. I don't drink the salt water, but I love the taste of salt water from the beach, from the ocean, from the Gulf, whatever. We didn't even get into it. Tell me about you and CALLERLAB.
What do you want to know about?
Well, I know you've been very active in CALLERLAB.
Yeah, I have been very active in CALLERLAB. I joined pretty quickly after I started calling, because I am a firm believer in giving back to the organizations. I was, active in committee work. I was elected to the board of governors, and I was fairly active in the board. Any organization, local, regional, national, that I'm a part of, I usually end up taking a leadership role, just because, I believe everybody should stand up and take their turn. You're not allowed to throw stones until you've been in the position.
Agreed.
That's just, if you have problems with any of them, then you need to get on the board, or you need to work on a committee and work from within to make change. And if you're not willing to do that and put in the hard effort, then you really don't have any right to open your mouth and complain. You just have a right to help.
I knew you were
So,
on the board. That's why I wanted to bring that up.
yep, on the
When
board.
I first got on it, I remember seeing you at that position.
Yep. And then, um, complete surprise to me, I would just put my name in the hat for, EC. I was elected to the EC, put my name in the hat for vice and chair, and I got elected chairman, which was a complete shock surprise because I did not expect that would happen. And, me being me, I decided I would take the challenge. There was one other woman who was elected chairman in the 90s, I think. And she served for a few months and then she resigned. And there was not a female chairman since then. And so I knew that aside from feathering the cap and, blah, 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 all that stuff, I knew there was an enormous responsibility on top of my head to, carry myself and complete my term, because that's how you affect change. And I remember being absolutely shocked. Shocked. Other people weren't, because apparently Jim Mayo's been grooming me for the position for a long time. Jim had been grooming, as were other people who have been, unbeknownst to me, pushing me along.
Right.
But it was in the organization, it's probably been the most, in some ways, the most important thing that I've ever done, because I think that there were a lot of people who didn't think that a woman could lead.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of old school. I mean, it's just old school. And I led with authority, and I tried to lead with grace, and I ran meetings, which was a shock to some people. There's a lot, as our people love to talk and hear themselves talk. And if you're going to have a meeting, it happens at every single level, even down to your local association. There are people who love to hear themselves talk.
Yep.
And if your leaders don't run the meeting will run, and then nobody wants to volunteer because they know it's going to be 3 hours when you can do all your business in 15 minutes. So I remember after the shock of being elected and the holy crap, now what am I going to do? And the, oh my gosh, I got elected.
Wow.
All the emotions went through. And then the reality, of crap, I have to give a chairman's speech. And at that point in my career, I was really struggling with finding my voice, because I didn't feel that I had very much to offer in some ways. Okay. And I'm not saying that for anything other than that's just where I was. It took me a while to find my voice and realize I do have something to offer. And I remember having to write that speech, and what could I possibly talk about, which is why, I talked about basically don't be a jerk.
Yep.
A lot of people don't understand why nobody comes back to their club, or their class or their workshop or their dance. Well, if we don't treat people with respect, I'm not, if you're one of those guys and I have a choice and it's between you and sweet potato, I'm not going to go to your dance if I know that you're going to be rude and disrespectful, and that I don't think you have the dancer's best interest at heart. Doesn't matter what you say, you and I privately, but that public face, if you want people to come, you've got to make them feel safe. You've got to give them a haven. You've got to, what am I, like that woman said, what am I going to do with that? Well, it's, if you create an environment of acceptance and fellowship, that's what you do with it. Yeah. The dancing is kind of secondary. So I remember being petrified and giving that speech, and, catching a lot of flack and a lot of not flack. But I always say that my legacy from my tenure is tiaras and Teresa.
Tiaras and Teresa. Very nice. Okay. Yep.
We hired Teresa.
We got Teresa.
And the women started wearing tiaras.
That's awesome.
To celebrate. So but you know, but I mean, I believe in the organization. There are some things I don't agree with, but that's part of being in a family. You know, families don't agree. And you know, it's hard to do the dance and to make sure that you're making the best decisions possible, especially in our organization, because there's so many paths to get into the activity, and no one path is the absolute right way, because your groups are different than my groups. You know what I mean? I may have youth. I'm certainly not going to teach them SSD in 9 months. I'm going to, you know, go from 0 to plus in a day type of thing. And you may have older people who they're never going to ever get any further than the basic program. But that's okay, because it's a place for them. So that's my CALLERLAB history. I was the first female chairman that served her full term.
That's why I brought it up. Like I said, that the first time I saw you, I think, was at a CALLERLAB convention, and you were up there, and I was like, and I didn't even know who you were, and I was like, okay, I guess that's who's in charge. And it was fantastic, you know, because I unfortunately, my life in military school and police work and law enforcement and all that, I understand a rank structure. But when it comes to CALLERLAB, I'm like, what's the difference between being on a committee and being on the board of governors? I don't know what any of that is, because I don't if you don't have a captain or a lieutenant or a major rank, I don't know what it is. And I was like, well, she's doing all the speaking. I guess she's in charge. That's great. And I really got a lot out of what you're saying. But then I just thought about, I didn't mean to, I wasn't, the end of the podcast wasn't going to bring that part up. But what I was going to ask too, and I appreciate you doing that, was do you have any words of wisdom for callers, from brand new callers, people thinking about it, people with 10, 12, 15 years like myself or on up? But you kind of put that out there with, you know, don't be a jerk, and, you know, treat the people so they want to come back. Do you have anything else for callers?
Well, you know, I think, I think that for me, what I tell callers that I mean, in fact, I just told that to somebody up at the Alaska convention. I think that for me, what's more important, what's the most important, especially in today's world, is that you have to be authentic. And by that, I mean, we hear it all the time. You're never going to be Garth. You may fancy yourself Garth. You're only going to be I'm never going to be Dolly Parton. I'm never going to be Deborah. I'm never going to be Tony. I have to take everything that I've learned and present the best version of me that I can. And I think at its core, it's that authenticity. So that if you talk to me today, well, you know, we chatted at the Nationals, and I'm no different there than I was here, except you're recording me. And if you come up to me in 3 months and have a conversation with me, I don't have to figure out, okay, how was I with Charlie? And what did I say? You know, and what did I put forth? Our dancers, a lot of our dancers are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And they know when they walk in a hall, the minute you start talking to them over that microphone, they sense whether or not they can trust you with their dance experience, or whether they've got their guard up. And I don't care what level you call. I don't care if you read. I don't care if you completely sight call. I don't care if you've got stuff memorized. I don't care if you do that mental image and you can turn around and close your eyes. That doesn't matter. What matters is do your dancers trust you that you have their best interest at heart? And, you know, you do that by, you know, learning your craft, certainly. You do that by picking appropriate singing calls that you should be doing, making sure they're pitched so that they don't sound like something's not, you know, every song can't be out of tune. You know, by championing new. We had up in Alaska on Friday night, we had a square of homeschoolers. Dad has taught his 5 children from 6 to 17 how to square dance using YouTube videos. And it was their first public dance. They came out and they danced in the back of the hall. We only had 5 squares. It's not like I couldn't see everybody. We had 5 squares. And I made sure I went up to speak to them. I watched them, and because I wanted them to succeed. They're new dancers. We all know if a new dancer comes to an event and they get decimated, there's a 50-50 chance we've lost. You know, and being willing to be flexible. You know, I had a preconceived what I was going to do in my head, because you got to go in with that. And it went completely out the window, and I adjusted to what the floor could do and who was there. So that authenticity, the being willing to know that your way is not always the right way, meaning compromise and thinking on the fly. And honestly, I don't care if you don't like people, just pretend like you like the people who get put in your path for the 2 hours that they're there. You know what I mean?
I was looking on Facebook and I saw you're in Alaska. I was like, is she even going to be home on Wednesday night? I don't know how we're going to do a podcast. I didn't know. I didn't know how long it was. So.
Yeah, we flew home. We got home. We took the red eye Monday night. But yes, but that really, I mean, truly the best advice I can give somebody is to be authentic. Even in your dealings with peers, you know, it's so fun to sit in that corral in the band hall and watch people, you know, because some people are authentic, and at other people, you know, they're just posturing themselves. And, you know, it's like, okay, first of all, if you're in the corral, we know you're a caller.
Right.
And second of all, if you're kissing up to everybody, you know, just be yourself. Just do your work. Maybe you haven't worked hard enough to be able to be up on that stage. Work a little harder. But anyways, I've been preaching that for a long time, that whole authenticity thing.
Well, Patty, it has been a pleasure. We might have a record at this point. I'm not sure.
You have to go watch your.
We're about 1 hour and 10. And like I guess
I don't think so.
Actually, Rambo 2 is now on my TV. So this must be a night of Rambo. Rambo 2 is on currently.
Well, you got to go watch Rambo 2.
Oh yeah, I've got it.
Because you have the clicker.
I've just got to unmute it. I'll watch it. And you have to watch Tombstone. That would be nice.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. It's 9 o'clock. What's today? Wednesday?
Yes. You can wait. You can wait till the weekend. You can run it.
I don't know what's on Wednesdays. Wednesday's a dead day for TV. AGT's not on. There's no cooking show. Gordon Ramsay's not on.
On that, did you ever watch the first 48?
I do watch the first 48.
Love the first 48. It's funny that since I don't have cable, whenever we go on to I go to a convention or a trip or whatever, and we stay in a hotel, it's always cable. The first 48 is on continually, and I will watch it always. I can go to sleep watching it, wake up watching it. Love first.
And Bad Boys, what you gonna do?
Oh, you can't beat cops.
When you come, see?
I thought police work was going to be like that. It's really not.
Oh, it's not?
No, it is.
Really?
It is, but it's not constant like it is on that show.
And they shoot in it. They shoot in the Atlanta region. How come you haven't pushed your way to the top?
That's one of my first 48 when they're in Atlanta, and I think DeKalb County, which is also the Atlanta area.
Yep.
I love those first 48. So it's good stuff. It's funny. I see some of the Atlanta detectives, and I'll bump into them if I happen to be in Atlanta. I'm like, oh my God, you're a TV star. But they're just on the show. So,
well, I appreciate you inviting me.
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
I'm glad I finally got to sit down with you. Of course, we get to talk a little bit at conventions and whatnot. We should see each other a little bit more since you're only in North Carolina. So we're probably 4 hours away.
Yeah, 4 hours.
Give or take. And but we will set up something.
Are you going to Tennessee?
I will be in Tennessee. Are you going to be there?
I'll see you in Tennessee. I'm not calling, but I'll see you in Tennessee. It's our first Tennessee convention.
I am not on the program to call because I jumped in late. Matter of fact, my wife,
too.
before she called, she was texting me, and I see that she was sending me the schedule or the dance schedule for it. So I have actually sent a text to the guy that's programming, just say, hey, if you got any open slots, you can throw me in.
Yep, me too. Awesome. We'll
I'm
see you in
going just
Tennessee.
for the, and that's your first one?
Yep.
It is one of my favorite. It is my favorite state convention. It's a fantastic venue. Now you've been to Gatlinburg before, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Downtown Gatlinburg is a nightmare when that road backs up. But the convention and all is just off of that. It's fantastic. I love the actual venue and the setup. It's great dancing. So if we don't get the call, there is a karaoke bar 1 block away. That we typically go to. Absolutely.
We'll do some karaoke. We'll do some karaoke.
Last year, me and Jet and Victoria Bundy and
we'll find a song to do.
Justin. Absolutely. We'll do some karaoke.
That'll be fun.
Well, that is awesome. I didn't know you were going to be in Tennessee. I will see you in August then, Patty.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I will
Have
talk
a good
to
night.
you soon. Yes, ma'am.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.